It is illegal to go within 5 nautical miles of this island because the inhabitants are known for aggressive behavior against outsiders.
If there is one thing we've all come to understand about our world, it is that it's much stranger than most of us care to realize. And even though most of our lives tend to be confined to our surroundings, it's always worth remembering that there are other parts of the world where life isn't necessarily lived the way we're accustomed to. Over the years, some people have set out to make contact with previously unknown cultures and civilizations. In this video, we'll be looking at a few of these cases, as well as highlighting how these people ended up getting a bit more than they bargained for. Raza Aslan's Hindu Journey. For our first instance, we'll be heading back to 2017, when a reporter named Raza Aslan made a rather daring journey to Asia to make contact with a relatively unknown tribe. At the time, Raza, an Iranian scholar and TV host who worked for CNN, was filming a segment for the cable news channel called Believers. It essentially focused on some of the world's unknown cultures and religions, with a view of helping to shed light on, well, how the other half lives. As part of the pilot episode, Raza traveled to meet with the Agori, a tribe of ascetic Shaivite sadhus based in Uttar Pradesh, India. The Agori are a very ancient tribe, with some sources claiming that they originated from the 4th and 5th centuries. Nevertheless, they remain relatively unknown, although over the years, more people have come out to learn more about their practices, which have raised a few eyebrows here and there. So, Raza and his crew decided to venture into the remote parts of India to meet with them. And, well, let's just say that his findings were quite intriguing. As part of his discovery, Raza was made to relate with a rather strange guru who covered himself with cremated ashes and wore what appeared to have been a necklace made of skulls.
Maybe I'll take this off right now and then... Just thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Honestly, the entire episode was just one exhibition of weirdness after another. In the same segment, Raza was convinced to literally eat what the Agori guru claimed to have been a human brain that had been burnt, and he also drank alcohol from a skull.
Why are people on that side of the river so afraid of the Agori? I see.
Basically, he went to make contact with these people and came back with a couple of bad habits. Everything came to an abrupt end, however, when the guru appeared to have gotten fed up with Raza and his film crew. He chased them away, going as far as flinging his own excrement towards them as they ran. Yeah, it was pretty obvious that this wasn't your customary friendly visit. Anyways, when the episode aired, it actually caused a bit of backlash. Many accused Raza of promoting Hindu-phobic content and reinforcing some of the negative stereotypes that have been spread about Hindus, while others just balked at the weirdness of the entire encounter. I mean, who on earth would eat a human brain in their right mind? Stricken Day in Vanuatu. One of the best things about the internet these days is that it provides an opportunity for everyone to explore. And thanks to the magic of YouTube, a lot of people have managed to venture far into distant lands and make contact with cultures that were previously unknown. We got a classic example of this back in 2019 when 2 Australian men, colloquially known as Strick and A, decided to head to Vanuatu to contact some locals there. Now, for those of you who might not know, Vanuatu is a nation in the South Pacific that is home to about 80 different islands that stretch up to about 1,300 kilometers. Most people who visit Vanuatu tend to go there for diving and snorkeling expeditions. But for Strick and A, there was an opportunity to meet people who lived in this nation that was just too good to pass up.
Hey, g'day legends, welcome back. My name's Az. I'm Strick from Back to Basics Adventures. Today we're on a really remote island. We've just touched down in Vanuatu. We've got rods, we've got shotguns loaded, we've got machetes. Anything's possible. Let's go check it out.
The video started out pretty chill. The guys visited a couple of local markets and interacted with the people around them. Then they head into the wild and enjoy some locally grown fruits. But things took a bit of a weird turn when Strick and A decided to visit a remote island and meet the people who lived there.
Get away from me!
What we need to do, we need to give him a fish. Yeah?
The guys managed to appease the locals with a peace offering, so that tense first encounter finally got quelled down. Then, they followed the locals to their homes and were given an opportunity to see just how they lived.
So we're walking up to a boiling pot on top of this hill.
Strick and A even got an opportunity to witness a festival in the village, and it was quite insightful for sure.
So we've just come into the festival arena of this village, and all the women from the village are in traditional dress, and they're sort of doing a bit of a warm-up sing and dance before.
In general, it was actually quite a refreshing experience. Strick and A found that the people of this island were generally accepting, and as long as they respected their cultures, traditions, and people, they were able to integrate pretty well with them. Hey, at least these guys didn't make them eat anything weird, am I right? Drew Binsky in Papua Island. Speaking of eating, there are several pieces of evidence that show the continued prevalence of cannibalism in our world. Now, while most people don't necessarily believe that it's a thing, let me tell you, there are several cultures in the world where cannibalism remains quite popular. Over the years, several people have looked to explore cultures where cannibalism is practiced. And back in 2023, a YouTuber named Drew Binsky decided to venture into Papua Island, the second largest island in the world, and a place where many people still practice cannibalism to this day. Now, to be fair, not everyone in Papua Island practices cannibalism, but Drew particularly focused on one of the tribes that had been said to practice this act. And to be honest, it was quite the experience. For one, even contacting the tribe was strange. Drew had to rely on a tour guide, who literally had to scream as they entered the jungle to let the locals know they were having guests.
Is that them? Is that them?
Yes.
Really? What does that mean?
It's a mean, okay, we are coming. That's giving a symbol of that.
Immediately, you kind of get the sense that this was a traditional tribe by every stretch of the word. Many of the people didn't even have full clothing, and they all had a very basic way of life.
Whoa. Hello. Oh.
Almost immediately, Drew got into the major issue, the fact that this tribe practiced cannibalism.
Everything that I hear about, like when I Google the tribes here, they talk about life 30, 40 years ago.
So, as it turned out, Drew was actually misled. Still, it was quite fascinating to see how the people of this tribe lived.
Traditionally, the Mamuna live in tall, stilted tree houses scattered throughout the jungle to protect themselves from floods and animals. Also, to disrupt other clans from capturing its members for cannibalistic needs.
Drew also learned that the neighboring tribe, which practiced cannibalism, actually did so mostly as a form of punishment. Still, I think it's pretty safe to say that having to live in fear of being abducted and killed isn't exactly the best. The story of John Allen Chow. You know, one of the golden rules of life is to generally leave people alone and mind your business. I get that. A lot of us have adventurous spirits and love to explore, but there are times when this can get you in trouble. John Allen Chow's story was a quintessential example of this. Born in 1991 in Scottsboro, Alabama, John always had a bit of an adventurous spirit. He was raised in a religious household and always dreamed of venturing into unfamiliar lands and spreading the gospel.
In John 14:15, Jesus tells us, If you love me, you will obey what I command. And one of the commands they gave us was in Matthew 28:19-20. He says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations."
Eventually, John found the Joshua Project, a missionary database where he first learned about North Sentinel Island, a remote island in the Indian archipelago. John was told that the Sentinelese had barely made contact with outsiders, and just like that, he got his mission in life, to travel down to this place, make contact with the Sentinelese, and teach them about the gospel of Jesus. The only problem with this plan was that John appeared to not know much about the Sentinelese, or their noted disdain for outsiders.
You should never go.
The most dangerous island on the planet.
It's the most dangerous island in the world.
The most scariest island on Earth.
The North Sentinel Islands were so scary that visiting the place without government permission was literally illegal. According to his written notes, John was actually aware of the risks. Still, he didn't care. In late 2018, he eventually ventured there, looking to fulfill what he believed to be his mission in life. According to reports, John made several attempts to get to the North Sentinel Islands. He eventually succeeded on his third try, reaching the island via a fishing boat and telling the fisherman who took him to leave him there. And that was basically the last anyone saw of him. The day after he arrived on the island, a crew of local fishermen patrolling the area found John's body being buried on the shore. To date, no one really knows what happened to John. But, from the reports, it appears that he was killed by the locals. I'm not exactly sure what he hoped to achieve, but I kind of feel like it would have been better if he went on his missionary mission in the company of others. Just a thought, though. Sabina Kulgars' experience. They say that the environment you grow up in has a considerable effect on you as a person. And to be honest, there's definitely a lot of truth to that. For Sabina Kulgar, home used to be West Papua, Indonesia. Sabina was born to linguists sent to Papua on a missionary journey in 1977. And if you know anything about missionaries, you'd know that wherever they are sent can easily determine the course of their lives. Anyways, despite being from Germany, Sabina's parents accepted the mission and went to West Papua to spread the gospel. And this was where she was eventually born. According to reports, Sabina's parents lived very close to the Fayu, a tribe of ethnic Indonesians living in the most remote areas of West Papua. She was basically born and raised in this region, and telling the story, she explained that the Fayu people were actually very accommodating of her and her family. Now, that said, it is worth noting that the Fayu people are known to also practice cannibalism, as well as a few other unconventional traditions. Still, Sabina explained that these ethnic Indonesians never harmed her or made her family feel uncomfortable. According to Sabina, life with the Fayu people was quite interesting. Because these people lived nomadically, she was able to learn about things like fishing and hunting, which helped improve her natural survival instincts. Her parents probably weren't too happy about that, but hey, when you're among Romans, you behave like them. So, why should that be any different with the Fayu tribe? That said, life wasn't always so rosy. Sabina explained that she grew up being constantly sick, as exposure to mosquitoes meant that she had frequent bouts with malaria. Still, her parents were able to afford decent health care, so she was fortunately able to survive. Despite the mixed bag that was her upbringing, Sabina actually claimed that she loved being with the Fayu people. In fact, she even explained that she had a bit of a rough time adjusting to life after she and her family returned to Germany several years later. The Maso Piro people Peru is one of the most beautiful and idyllic countries in South America. Much of its beauty comes from the abundance of natural landscapes around it, but a lot of it also has to do with its people. Although Peru is a diverse country with several cultures, one of the most interesting has to be the Maso Piro, also known as the Nomole or Cujareño. The Maso Piro are an indigenous tribe of nomadic hunter-gatherers that live in the Amazon rainforest region of Peru. No one really knows where they came from or how long they've been there, but reports suggest that the little contact they've had with outsiders must have begun around the late 1800s. So far, there's only a little information about the Maso Piro people. But back in 2022, footage showed the inhabitants of the village coming out of their jungle encampments, most probably to search for food and sustenance. The footage was quite helpful. At the time, there were debates about how many of the Maso Piro people were still alive. Some experts believed that they couldn't be more than 50, while others pegged their number around the 200 mark. From the clip, however, it seemed pretty obvious that the Maso Piro people are much more than most of us might think. That said, contacting the Maso Piro people isn't easy. They're said to be quite hostile to outsiders, and there have even been cases of people being mortally wounded when they tried to make contact with the tribe. So, I think it's safe to say that these guys want to be left alone. Contact with Vanuatu's forgotten people. For our next clip, we'll be heading back to somewhere we've been before, Vanuatu. Considering that the nation is relatively developing, there are still a lot of races in its remote areas that have yet to be contacted. Back in November 2022, a YouTuber under the pseudonym YBS Youngbloods had a rather interesting encounter with one of Vanuatu's uncontacted races. The explorer who went to the country to explore was apparently given a tip that his villa was close to the habitat of one of the country's many rural societies. So, he and his tour guide decided to charter a boat and give this place a look. The moment the locals saw YBS coming, they immediately gave him a hearty, albeit rather terrifying welcome. Hey, look, I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but if a group of people I don't know dragged me into their tribe like that, I'd be pretty scared. Still, I guess that's why I'm not an explorer or adventurer like YSB. He was eventually taken into their village, where he participated in some of their traditions, including, as it turned out, painting himself black, just to blend in, I guess. At some point, he even met the tribal chief and sampled some of their food. No, don't worry. He wasn't made to eat human remains or anything. When his visit was done, he left the tribe with nothing but fond memories and smiles. Thank goodness, wouldn't you say? Olive Oatman's Switch. We live in a world where anything can happen. I know a lot of us try to predict our days, but the randomness of life is something that we should all keep in mind. For a perfect reminder, consider the story of Olive Oatman. Born in September 1937, Olive was as white as they come. She was born to a family in Chicago, with her family being incredibly religious. Because they were Mormons, the Oatmans traveled quite a lot. And on one day in March 1851, while traveling from Illinois to the confluence of the Gila and Colorado rivers, they were attacked by a small group from a Native American tribe. To date, there have been speculations about which tribe it was that attacked the Oatmans. Olive claimed that they were Apaches, but some have also claimed that they must have been Tolkapayas, a tribe that was quite prominent around those parts. The Native American attackers ended up killing Olive's parents, as well as 4 of her siblings. They took her and her younger sister, Mary Ann, as prisoners, holding them as slaves for a year before eventually trading them to the Mojave tribe. Olive ended up spending about 4 years with the Mojave, while Mary Ann sadly died in captivity. Interestingly, it was said that a group of missionaries visited the Mojave and attempted to purchase Olive's freedom, but she had apparently grown accustomed to life as a part of the Mojave tribe and decided that she'd prefer to stay there. In fact, she even got a tattoo on her chin to show that she had become a part of the Native American tribe. I'm not particularly sure why she'd prefer captivity to freedom, but hey, who am I to judge? Eventually, though, Olive was freed after a Yuma Indian messenger named Francisco arrived at the Mojave village with a message from the authorities at Fort Yuma. The authorities had apparently learned that a white girl was being held hostage by the Mojaves. and they requested her release. Although the Mojaves rejected the initial request, they eventually acquiesced after the Fort Yuma authorities included some trade items in exchange for Olive. Oh, the authorities also threatened to invade the Mojaves if they didn't stand down and let Olive go. So, I'm guessing the Mojaves didn't want any of that smoke and just decided to let the girl go. Just like that, Olive was reunited with her only surviving sibling. She eventually went on to live a relatively full life, dying at the age of 65 in March 1903. All in all, I think it's safe to say she definitely had an eventful childhood. Not that I'm jealous or anything, of course. Initial encounter jitters. You know that feeling when you suddenly see someone step into your home? For most of us, that initial meeting can be a bit tense. I mean, you don't exactly know what this person is doing, and until you can confirm that they don't intend to hurt you, I'm guessing your guard will always be up. Well, you can understand what these guys must have felt. Apparently, they noticed an explorer making his way to their tribe, and they immediately began to act a bit suspicious.
The footage you are seeing is unedited. The only addition is the voice of Jean-Pierre.
According to Huawei, they don't believe that the white man exists. But if they do, that makes me one of the living dead.
Fortunately, the explorer managed to show the locals he wasn't dangerous, and with that, he was able to gain entry into their home. Even after he was able to get in, some of the locals still had suspicions. I mean, it's not particularly surprising, especially considering that they had probably never seen an outsider before. All in all, this was quite an enlightening experience. The explorer must have been scared out of his mind, but I can just imagine how surprised the locals must have been. Boy, the stories they'd be telling anyone who wasn't there. Am I right? A cry for help. For our final entry, we'll be taking you back to 2016, when an explorer named José Carlos Morales partnered with the BBC to explore the depths of the Amazon jungle in search of an uncontacted tribe living there. Even from the start, Morales explained the difficulty of the operation. Despite the difficulty, Morales explained that this was something they had to do to at least establish some form of contact with these rural dwellers. And although the crew was unable to get on the ground, aerial footage showed that there indeed were people on the land below. The footage showed that these people had established quite an interesting civilization, complete with homes and even farmlands where they grew what they ate. As you'd imagine, there was little by way of technology. However, in an environment like this, who would even need such? Witnessing the interesting setting, Morales explained that the prevalence of illegal logging in the Amazon could threaten their way of life. As he put it, missions like this are important, as they can help provide proof to the world that there are people living in this jungle who need to be helped. Logging, as well as diseases and ailments, would definitely be the biggest threat facing these people. But, hopefully, action by the government can help preserve their habitat, as well as save their lives. Now, I know that a lot of us love to explore, and I don't know about anyone else, but something tells me that a heart-racing encounter with an uncontacted village isn't what I'd like to do. Still, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Did any of these instances shock you? Comment below and let me know.